Welcome to the CAFMA Connect. I'm your host, Fire Chief Scott Freitag. What we have here is a failure to communicate. That line is from the 1967 movie starring Paul Newman called Cool Hand Luke. When I interviewed for the fire chief position here in Arizona, the one question that I was asked in the interview process was, what do I feel is the biggest problem within a fire service agency? And I responded that it's the same problem that employees complain about across all industries and jurisdictions, and that's a lack of, or at least a perceived lack of, communication. It doesn't seem to matter how hard we try to communicate, it's never enough. Unlike when I started in emergency services 27 years ago, everyone today has a little handheld computer they carry with them. Those computers bring them information 24/7 by way of smartphones and social media. They can be both a blessing and the bane of our existence, as you will hear in episode 2 with Eric Rossoff from the Career Survival Group. We actually hear two things today in regard to communication. One is that we're not getting enough information out, and the other is that we're getting too much information out. So how do we reconcile these two complaints? Both are actually correct. We're all getting too much irrelevant information or spam, and it can be difficult to separate the so-called wheat from the chaff, or what is quality information or important information and what is not. On the other hand, sometimes as senior leaders, we communicate a lot. We add to the chaff by not understanding what our folks really want to know about and what really doesn't impact them. And we forget some of the really important information that we need to get out to them. Since I was hired as fire chief a little over 7 years ago, I've sent out a newsletter every Friday to all personnel outlining what's happening within our agency as well as my schedule for the upcoming week. We also send out leadership philosophies and other articles. What's the readership of this? Maybe 50%. The information is available in each person's email, yet people are not taking advantage of the access. Why? Well, let's be honest. There is some level of laziness that is part of it. But probably one of the bigger issues is that different generations seek different methodologies for gathering information today. One of the opening speakers for Fire Rescue International in 2019 spoke directly to the challenges of communicating with the different generations. Some of the newer folks only listen to about 8-second sound bites. That's difficult to overcome, especially for someone like me who likes to use a lot of words. So we at CAFMA have been working to rethink our approach to communicating with everyone within our organization as well as with our community. With me today to discuss our new approach to disseminating information and training is Assistant Chief of Operations John Feddema. John, I know your name.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's all right. I've heard much worse than that, so that's not a problem at all.
So what are we working on? From your point of view, John, and interacting with your operations folks and operating with the non-operations folks, what are some of the things that we're trying to accomplish with this new approach?
I think, like you said, you mentioned it as far as the amount of information that you've sent out, especially if you look at how long you've been doing this over the past 7 years and how many reviews have gone out. The goal is to communicate. The goal is to provide that information. And obviously, we're just looking at what's the next step, what's the next avenue.
Right.
And I think it'll be interesting to see, how folks kind of perceive this next goal in using this platform to get the information across. Because, again, our goal is not to operate even as senior staff in a silo. It should be very clear, hopefully, what direction we're going as an organization, what we're looking for from people, our personnel and promotions and everything else. The information is out there, and this is just another avenue to do that, which I think is good.
Yeah, so what is it that we're talking about? Well, it's the CAFMA Connect, the new podcast, and we're going to have 2 tracks with this podcast. So one will be the overview of the review. So the newsletter that goes out every Friday, for those of you who are not part of CAFMA or who don't receive it now, we're going to continue the written format. But then for those who don't like to read, we're going to give an overview of the review each week, which will last about 10 to 11 minutes in the practice sessions that we've had. And that'll just give our folks 2 other means to be able to either listen or watch and listen to what we're putting out in writing. So we're going to have the written form, we're going to have the spoken word, and we're going to have the visual with the spoken word. there really shouldn't be a lot of reason that you're not getting the information. On the other hand, it is incumbent upon us to make sure that we're getting out relevant information throughout the agency about what's going on, not just from my 30,000-foot view as the fire chief, but from everyone's view within the organization, from operations, for example.
Sure. No, and I think what you've looked at doing with the podcast and looking at even capturing an outside perspective, because obviously, we have our opinions and our direction we have as an organization, as a senior leadership, and we try to communicate that along the way. But one of the other parts I think that is going to be good is capturing those outside, perspectives. And the folks that you have lined up into the future for future podcasts, I think will be interesting to see the information that comes in from the outside. From the training aspect, we've always encouraged folks to go to the outside, seek training outside of our own organization. That way we're bettering ourselves. They say iron sharpens iron, and we want to go find organizations that are doing things better than us. And I think what your goal is with capturing some of those outside perspectives from experts in different fields will only help sharpen us along the way.
Absolutely, and that's the global perspective we talk about, and that's the second track, and those will actually be numbered episodes of podcasts that'll be longer, anywhere between 30 minutes or an hour, and we don't really want to go longer than an hour because we'll lose attention of some folks.
Keep me for an hour.
No, I think we could keep you engaged for an hour if we change the topic up on every 10 minutes or so.
There you go. I like it.
But I do think that we have a fairly good lineup of folks from all across the country. The great thing is that because of technology today and because of the work of our tech services division, specifically our tech manager, Jonah, we are able not only to have people in studio here with us, but we can do remote interviews, which opens up really the entire world to us from whoever we can bring in and have someone agree to be a guest.
Yep. No, I think it opens up those conversations. And you mentioned also kind of the review of the review, and I think that just kind of puts the icing on the cake in terms of the information you're trying to get out there and the opportunity to just articulate some of what you're writing down and some of the articles that are in there. I think will only hopefully add to it. And again, if people choose to look at it and read it or listen, it's up to them. I think the big part that from the organization side is our personnel are worth it, the effort put into it, and it may be different times that people choose to log in to watch or choose to read. And sometimes with the less viewership or less readership, that might be an indication that things are going well. I think when there's going to be times of turmoil, that same information is going to be there, and they still have the same access to information.
Well, and the great thing is, John, if we can put out a quality product, which is our goal, and that's why it's taken us so long to get to this point.
You might want a different helper.
Yeah. The issue that we've had and the delays really relate to what we refer to as the quote-unquote talent in front of the camera, which is not very talented. But we're trying, and I think over time we'll get better. But with the podcast platforms being on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, all of these different opportunities, and a lot of our folks take part in workout routines during the work hours, which we encourage. And what they'll do is put in Bluetooth headsets or some sort of earbuds, and they can listen to the podcast if they're so inclined while they're working out or while they're on the treadmill. Now, I understand that some may not want to listen to my voice while they're doing that. But I know that for me in particular, I'm a fan of the Jocko podcasts. And so every Wednesday when the new one comes out, as I'm getting my workout in the morning at the gym, I'm listening to the Jocko podcast while I'm working out. And I know it may seem counterintuitive that I don't have some hard driving music on to keep me motivated, but the reality is I enjoy the material that Jocko puts out. And I hope that over time, our podcast will get to the point where the folks listening to us will say, hey, you know what? Their voices and their personalities aren't so bad. So we'll tune in and listen, especially because they're bringing some quality guests on the program.
Yeah, and I think that'll be key. is looking at, again, the outside perspective. It's not just our own view of the organization. It's looking at the experts on different areas, and in between, they get to listen to you or I, and they get to endure that part to get to maybe the best part, which will be, like I say, those experts coming in, which is going to be good.
Right. And, we really drive home the point, or we try to drive home the point within our organization that we do, as you mentioned, need to look outside of ourselves. And sometimes when we do that, we reaffirm what we're doing here and that we're doing a good job with it. Other times we see, what, we could be better. And I think that should be the goal, really, of any organization, is continually striving for improvement. Yep. Not change for change's sake, but change because there's a need in the organization for us to continue to progress and move forward. At the same time, developing all of our personnel, because you and I both know that there's significant turnover in the next 5 to 10 years. It doesn't seem like that long a time, but it's going to go by quick.
Yes. No, it is going to go away very quickly. And obviously that was discussion this morning, even with the BCs. And you look at how are we training our personnel who are coming up and taking over leadership positions in the future. And the expectation is not only as an organization, we are working to provide some of that training and some of that information, but at the same time, there's an expectation that some of our personnel are also going out and, capturing that information and working on bettering themselves and in turn bettering this organization.
Absolutely. And the other benefit to them going outside the organization, John, is that they're making connections and networks. Yes. And so with the advent of the CAFMA Connect and looking for guests from around the country, we can have some of our folks go out, attend a training class, and come back and say, hey, I just connected with this individual. This person has some great information on this topic. I think they would agree to do a podcast episode with us.
I think it's an opportunity for our personnel to do guest hosts as well. I think that
agree.
Would be excellent. So,
we have Captain Merrill, but we've been concerned about putting him behind a microphone.
He used lots of words like you do, so
he does. I think he may actually use more words than I do.
I agree.
But as we continue the process, the other part of this, though, I think, John, is we talk a lot about culture and building a culture of excellence, which means continually striving to do better, to communicate better with folks. But a lot of organizations develop mission, vision, values, and they put them on the wall in posters, and then they don't revisit them.
Sure. And
our hope is that through our podcast episodes, not only can we share information, keep people up to date, introduce them to new topics and experts, but reinforce and drive home the culture that we're trying to build in this organization for the long term.
Absolutely. No, I think any culture in an organization is driven by, the top down at all levels. So, the culture of a station is driven by the company officer and how they go about, that 24-hour shift. The culture of a battalion is driven by that battalion chief. And we are coming in, hopefully, with that same kind of concept in mind, that we're taking our values and we're living those out. And I think this whole project is part of that goal for the professionalism and our goal to communicate and, be good leaders for this organization. And part of that is, like I say, capturing those outside perspectives to make sure that we are on track, we are on focus as well.
Well, and the other part of this, beyond culture or maybe in concert with culture, is understanding that the fire department is a system, that there is no one division or part of this organization that is any more or less important than any other part of the organization. And so to that end, while we will have some fire-specific folks on here as guests, we will also look for other folks who are not necessarily fire-specific. So we'll be talking about topics of leadership, of professional development. So just a variety of things that we can visit that without the podcast format, we wouldn't have any other way to really broadcast a message or get that information out.
Yeah. If you look at how even this past year has changed meetings, it has changed training, and we use a lot of remote opportunities to connect with people, to communicate with people, and it's only forced us to kind of adapt and be able to overcome some of those distant issues. And I think this is another opportunity to capture on folks that may not be here, but yet we can still get their expertise, capture that information that they have that will only make us better.
Well, and that was one of the concerns when we initially talked about doing a podcast was how do we get guests? Who are we going to get, especially if, you know, we're in the Quad City, the Prescott area, and Prescott Valley is where the studio is. And we're isolated really from the Phoenix metro area where a lot of our peers are located. So it would require us requesting them to drive an hour and a half, 2 hours up the hill, visit with us for a half an hour or an hour, and then drive back down, which is a lot to ask. So through technology, we're able to visit with those people. And again, it just expands our horizons. We can have more guests. And I think the podcast can be more impactful and informative for our membership, as well as anybody else who chooses to listen.
Yeah. Yep. No, I think, like you say, especially with bringing in, not just fire-specific individuals and specific guests, but looking out, going beyond the fire service. I know you've talked to a handful of different people to look at the mental health aspect of it. And I think, there's areas that affect the fire service, but also affect all the different divisions as well, that I think if we can capture some of that, and again, if it's the opportunity, if people choose to, they can listen in and go from there.
Well, and I think here's a great example of that, John. It will likely be episode 3, but we have Frank Lito, who is the Deputy Director of the Behavioral Health Unit for FDNY. That will be a special guest. And you're taking part in a new program that you just came back from, your first week of training. And so getting you involved in that particular episode specifically, because what you're working on outside of here with the Mighty Oaks Foundation is related directly to behavioral health, which has a lot of benefits that you bring back to our organization through that. And then if we couple that with what Frank brings to the table with all of his background and experience, I think we can provide some really good contemporary, up-to-date information related to behavioral health for our folks and the fire service in general.
Yeah. Obviously, the one part of it that I would say I'm using to try to capture some information as well is trying to tie it to my EFO as well. So the more work I do now in preparation will hopefully add to success later. But mental health obviously is, I want to say it's an emerging topic. It's always been there, but we're seeing the effects of it more and more. And like I say, the opportunity last week to sit with veterans and first responders who are dealing directly with issues of suicide and other mental health challenges, it only highlights the need for our organization to try to take the next step. And capturing Frank, and you look at some of the Mighty Oaks information, being able to take that next step, not knowing, we don't know what it is today, but getting that information, going out and reaching out, I think we'll be able to better, as an organization, take that next step in preparing our personnel better and being there to support them along the way, so that we have folks that are completing a 25-year career, 30-year career, and are doing it healthy. No different than we are treating the body, and we require physicals and all other kind of peer fitness or PT monitoring type training. What's the next step on the brain and winning the battle between the ears?
That's an extremely important topic. And, episode 1, as we mentioned, is with Eric Rossoff with the Career Survival Group. I'm sorry, that's episode 2. This is episode 1. But with Eric, and that goes back to winning that battle between the ears as well, not necessarily from the behavioral health standpoint, but from the standpoint of we practice, we train, we work operationally, we understand what we're doing when we get into that operational environment, but we lose more personnel, both operations and non-operations, to administrative type of issues. And so while the size of our organization makes it logistically difficult to get everyone together in the room for Eric's program, the fact that we had him on here just to be able to talk for half an hour or 40 minutes about what the overall message is that he's trying to get across that we can share with our folks. And then, of course, bring him back. But we need to think about administratively how are we training our folks so that they have a long and successful career and don't lose their position because they do something without thinking.
Yeah, no, like you say, it's sometimes it's a small issue that grows, or a small moment in time, and can have a long lasting impact. And so I think, like I say, that training, and Eric does a great job, capturing on the issues that he is seeing in the fire service, the things that we do to get ourselves in trouble. And I think he did a great job, including, the feedback from the recent BC Academy on, presenting information that is relevant to the long-term success of our personnel. Because in those moments that Eric kind of highlights, and the little things that we do to get ourselves in trouble, that ties in to the mental health challenges as well. And he kind of compares, the career survival to, that not directly for a suicide, but how impactful that is to a family if you do lose your job along the way. When you specifically are in a profession that you hope to retire and have a long career and a good retirement.
As Eric says, that's a very bad day when you have to call home and say, "Guess what happened at work today, honey? Yeah. I no longer have a job. Remember those benefits and that retirement I had? All gone because I did something without thinking through it, an emotional reaction to something." Let me take a step back real quick, because you talked about EFO, and just for the folks out there who are not familiar with that, that's the Executive Fire Officer Program through the National Fire Academy. And we have a great opportunity. I was able to secure a couple of guests upcoming. We're going to record them in December sometime. And that is the current Deputy Administrator of the U.S. Fire Administration, Chief Tanya Hoover, and then the new Superintendent. She's the immediate past Superintendent of the National Fire Academy, and then the new Superintendent. So what I really like about that, besides the information that they can bring to the table for our folks related to emerging issues and trends in education in the fire service, is that I can share with them that you're going to be in the program so that they can keep a close eye on you and
can
report
they help
back
me
to
with
me if
my
there's
grade
any problems. I don't think so. Yeah. And you are going to have to read as part of the program. I know that's one of your favorite things to do.
Yes, it is.
They're not pop-up books, by the way.
That's trouble.
Some of the other guests that we have upcoming that I'm pretty excited about, Dr. Sarah Jenke out of Kansas City. Yep. She's part of a team that does some of the leading research on firefighter health and wellness. She works with Frank Lito, obviously, but she also does a lot of work on cardiac and cancer issues. And cardiac we're very familiar with in the fire service because we've talked about that for years. Mm-hmm. And that's the catalyst for a lot of the physical training programs and the physicals that we do. Yep. Cancer is relatively new, and it's not that cancer is new. Sure. It's that we're recognizing it as a workplace hazard for firefighters.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, like I say, you see that changing in the fire service. I mean, you see it in live fire burning, how organizations are evolving and changing procedures. We've done, I think, a pretty good job in our own organization in looking at how we improve our cancer awareness and some of our policies. We still have a long way to go. And again, the goal is to that career survival, but just from a different aspect of it, from the cancer part of it. Again, there's a lot of unfortunate stories across the fire service where hopefully we can start to prevent some of those casualties, along the way, right, through some of the policies, procedures, and, safety tactics that we put in along the way.
Well, and, there's a lot of fire stations that over the years have painted "everybody goes home" on the garage door. So as the crews get in the engine and the door goes up, they're seeing that "everybody goes home" mantra. And we look at it from an operational perspective in that we want safety on the fire ground. But I really think that it goes back not just to the safety and keeping an eye out for each other. It's how are you wearing your PPE to best protect you from cancer? Not just the heat of the fire or the particulate in the smoke, but the carcinogens that you absorb through your skin. What are you doing to take care of your gear and prevent cross-contamination? So everybody goes home takes on a lot more meaning when you start looking at it as more holistically than just, well, everybody goes home because we responded to a fire call and we made it back.
And I like the way some of that has transitioned where everybody goes home and then returns their following shift. The goal is not just going home. The goal is returning, whether it's, physical health, whether it's mental health. It's the ability to go home, have a healthy and happy home life, and then return the next shift and keep moving on.
Well, and we're also fortunate. We talked about worldwide, and I had the opportunity to speak with a gentleman out of Australia who's one of Australia's leading experts in emergency response, which includes wildland firefighting. Mm-hmm. And so I was able to communicate with him, and he's agreed to come on and do an episode with us. So it's going to be great to kind of hear a perspective from a completely different country about emergency response and wildland firefighting and collaboration, not just during the event, but after the event.
He probably sounds better than I do, too, so that'll be fun.
He sounds better than both of us, to be honest with you.
That'd be good.
So we also have the U.S. Fire Administrator, Fire Chief Keith Bryant, who's agreed to do a podcast with us. We're excited about having him on because he really has his fingers on the pulse of issues in the fire service. And when we spoke recently, he talked about updating America Burning, but two different versions. One is America Burning Wildland Edition, and then an update to America Burning from the 1970s, which was a catalyst for so many changes in firefighting and safety as it relates to even children's pajamas or smoke detectors and things like that. And I remember I did when I was going to the university, and I was in a statistics class, which I hate math, so not my favorite class. But I was able to do a worldwide statistical study on the fire problem across the globe, looking at industrialized countries. And this was back in 2003, so the data's it's way out right now, so I hesitate to talk about specifics. But the reality is the United States has one of the biggest fire problems in the world, and that's a result of cultural issues where if somebody accidentally catches their house on fire because they were careless with a candle, the firefighters turn out with blankets and clothes, and the neighbors turn out with things that the folks need. And, pretty much we just address the needs of the person who is in crisis at the moment. In other countries where they're more densely populated, especially in multifamily structures, you can be held criminally liable for that. So they have fewer of those types of fires. So are we going to change the culture in the United States? Doubtful, because that's not who we are as a country. But to be able to talk with someone from another country and say, well, how do you approach this? What are your thoughts on it? How have you been successful over the years in Australia with your strategies?
Yeah, no, I think, like I say, that, again, it's not just an outside perspective of our organization, but an outside perspective of the American Fire Service, and I think it'll be good. I'm looking forward to it.
I think we have a lot on the horizon, John. I know we continue to line up people that we'd like to interview. Mm-hmm. I think we're going to have some good guests over the coming years in different episodes. We're probably going to put out maybe one long episode a month, just because we don't have the ability with our regular jobs that we have to do. And Jonah is tech manager and our excellent producer. He actually has other responsibilities besides standing in here with us and watching this fiasco.
Poor guy.
I feel bad for him, but I appreciate what he does for us. We don't want to start putting too much together where we can't get our other jobs done. But that said, we have several episodes we have lined up to tape just in the next several weeks, so that we have months worth, so we can start putting them out and not get behind. And I think that's vitally important because we don't want to lose our audience. We don't have one right now, but once we get an audience,
we have an audience of one right now. Yes,
yeah, we're the audience of one. Jonah is here watching this, and hopefully others will watch or listen to this as we go on. So, John, thank you so much for being here with me today. Not that you really had a choice.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah. And Jonah, thank you for all your work behind the camera and the audio. Again, not a lot of choices because we all work here, and I thought this was a great idea, so we're going to continue with it. Mm-hmm. For all of you out there, if you don't receive the review, you can go to our website, cazfire.org, and subscribe to it if that's something that you're interested in. For all of you who work for CAFMA who would like to stop receiving the review, that's not really an option for you, so the unsubscribe button will not work in your case. But we look forward to this program. We look forward to improving the way that we handle these episodes and how we are as your hosts. You'll see a lot more of John and I as we move forward, as well as some of our other assistant chiefs and others within the organization. So, again, thank you so much for tuning into the CAFMA Connect. We look forward to the future and what we will be able to bring to the table as far as additional information on leadership strategies, tactics, both non-ops operations and administration. So it should be fun. Stay tuned. Stay with us. And we'll have some better talent in the future in the way of guests.
Perfect.